Hi Jay.
Good evening, Shipra. Good evening, Aditi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi.
So what's going on?
Hey, Shipra, the gentleman who recommended the
hmm
session topic, he didn't join, is it?
Yeah, looks like that. Um, his ID was Joe. Uh, I only have you
Right,
in
right,
between
sure.
us. So looks like he didn't join in. But yeah, the topic is user stories. Feel free to let me know in case you have any experiences to share with regards to user stories, or if you'd like to point out something, or if you have any questions.
Maybe Shipra, can you give us a journey of any scenario, any functionality, a journey of a user story from a one-line user story that the stakeholders drops into the product backlog, and then how is it turns and transforms into a product increment, please.
Okay, sure. Um, Okay, so let's take an example of login screen, right? So we all are familiar with login screens, isn't it? So you have an
Yeah,
application,
right.
which, you want users to be able to log into the application. It could be a web-based application, it could be a Windows-based application, but login is login, isn't it? Yeah. So the very first thing is, what is a business requirement? So when I say as a user, right? So first of all, I'm saying as a user, I want this, so that this. So now I start thinking who all will be the users that will be logging into my application. So let's take an example of an Amazon web page. Yeah. So I want users to be able to log in and order whatever they like. So my logins could be maybe a customer. My user could be for a seller. I may have different logins for a different type of customers, isn't it? So maybe for my seller, I may want additional information to be captured while creating their login IDs. So that makes me think who all are my users. So let's say I'm as a customer or as a seller, right? So now I start thinking, will I have a same login page for both, or will I have different login screens for for customer and for seller? So you might have seen, if you log into ICICI website, it asks you whether you are a retail user or whether you are some other option is also there, right? So sometimes different websites need different types of logins. Administrator, for example. So if you are an administrator, you'll have a different login, right? So you may have to cross some additional checks. So as a user, I can now have a single business requirement. So as a user of the system, that encompasses my customer, seller, administrator, or I can say, I have three business requirements: one for user, one for seller, and one for administrator. With me so far, Jay?
Oh, yes, yes, Shipra. Thank you.
Sorry, your voice broke.
Oh, yes, absolutely clear. Clear. So, three perspectives of a requirement: administrator, seller, and user.
Right. Uh, I won't say user because even administrator and seller is my user. So administrator, seller, and customer. Now, what I want,
Oh,
yeah, I want to be able to log into the Amazon web page. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. All three logins will need that. So that I can, so now, so that will differ. So for a customer, as a customer, I want to be able to log into Amazon web page so that I can make a purchase. As a seller, I want to be able to log into Amazon web page so that I can sell my products. As an administrator, I want to be able to log into Amazon web page so that I can perform my administrative duties, isn't it? So different people will have different objectives. So uh, the standard format that is used for writing user stories is made in such a way that it tickles your brain and it makes you think who all will be my users, who what is their end objective. So now when I'm saying administrative, I have to perform administrative duties, then again, I'm thinking on back of my mind, oh, now this administrator needs to have some additional functionalities. What are they? Have I, created backlog stories for them? Isn't it? So that's how you start writing your user stories. So your business requirement is in a, it's now clear that you want users to be able to log in. Okay.
Yes, right, Shipra.
Now coming to functional requirements. So when we say functional requirements, different projects write, their acceptance criteria in a different way. Some projects are very keen and they want to follow the formats and they say always write the stories in given when then format. Some projects are very lenient and they're like, give me the story, doesn't matter how you are writing it. And BAs end up writing shall statements. Some projects are even more lenient and they are like, don't give me the acceptance criteria, just give me, tell me what the story is supposed to do. So then in that case, BA just writes, one-liners, things that, create a login page for the user, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. So irrespective of how you are forming your sentences, even if you're forming your sentences in given when then format, or you are writing shell statements, or you are just writing stories in from UX perspective, user click this, user click that, you need to define the functional functionalities around the business requirement. Now if I am taking an example of a login page, right? So now I can have different types of logins. I can have a login which is linked to my single sign-on. So we call it as SSO login. I can have a login which is linked to my email account, Outlook account, or Google account. I may have a login which might be associated with user ID and password. So user might be adding a user ID and password. Yeah. So sometimes you make a direct connection with Facebook account or Google account, and it connects you with that. So now I'm writing acceptance criteria and I'm thinking, oh, there can be different types of logins. Will I cover all the logins in a single story? No, because different logins need different functions. They need different functionalities. So what I will do now is I will make sure that other logins, my alternate paths, are covered in different user stories. So I should have user story titles. I may do these logins in my current release, or I may, park them for later, but I should have my stories split. I should have my stories split up already into different alternates that are available. Yeah. So maybe I'll say login via Google account or login via Facebook account as a two separate stories. Then I may have a separate story for login via SSO, and I may want to cover the ID and password login in this particular story. Yeah. So I'm taking the things out of scope so that I have a focused story, which is small in nature and an independent story, isn't it? Okay. So what I will start doing now
Yes,
is, first of all, I'll link out the other stories. So the other stories that you have created for login via Facebook, login via Google, login via uh, SSO. Yeah. So all those are linked to my story. And now I know what my story needs to contain. So let me take an example of a given when then format so that it's because it's a standardized format. So I'll say, and again, let me take a story of customer login. Okay. So as a customer, I want to be able to log into Amazon web page so that I can use the application to order. Given I am a customer, when I use Amazon link, and I'll give the link in the bracket www.amazon.com, then I shall be presented with the login page. Okay, this is my AC1. AC2 will be given I have visited Amazon login page when I enter my user ID in the login ID screen and password in the password field, then system shall check whether the ID and password combination is valid or not. Given I have entered ID and password, when system has determined my user ID and password is valid, then system shall take me to the home page. Given I have entered my user ID and password, when system has determined that my ID and password is not correct, then system shall tell me one of these options. So I'll define in which case what option will come. So if my user ID does not contain an @ symbol, system will tell me it's not valid user ID not found, or valid user ID not entered. If my ID does not match with any of the IDs in the database, then system should give me a message that user ID not found. If my password does not match up with the user ID, then system should give me a message that user ID and password combination is not correct, like that. Okay. Now, this is how you write the stories. You break down your stories into different acceptance criteria and you essentially give a user journey. Okay. Now I have made a deliberate mistake in this acceptance criteria. Can any one of you tell me what that is? On the onset, it looks all good, right? I'm presented with the login page. System will check whether the combination is correct or not. If the combination is correct, system will allow me and take me to the home page. If the combination is not correct, system will stop me from proceeding and give me a valid error or a relevant error. Yeah. So what's the mistake in this story? Any idea? Any guesses?
If users are new, then they should prompt to be sign up to the system.
Right. But isn't signing in journey? Yeah. I can cover the same in this story also. I can cover it in a separate story also. Yeah. Because signing in journey is
Yeah.
bit different. It's an alternate path. Creation of new
Yeah.
user account. So would cover that particular scenario in a different story, because I'll then start with the story. Given I have entered a user ID and password, if my user was not found, and I have given a user not found, then I'll be presented with another option to say whether you want to create a new account, like that. So my story will
Yeah.
start from there, and I like to cover that in a separate story.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you note any other mistake in the 4 criteria that I gave you?
No.
There? Karthik would like to join us on stage. Share your views. Yeah, he seems to be facing some technical issues. Okay. So the mistake I did was in my acceptance criteria 2, wherein I'm saying when I have entered my user ID and password, system should check whether it's a valid combination or not. The problem here is this story is not testable. So my user story criteria are supposed to be testable. Each and every individual criteria, I should be able to test it. QC should be able to test it. So QC can enter the ID and password. They can meet the when condition. But whether the system is checking it behind the scenes or not, how will they know? Right? They can only know from acceptance criteria 3 and 4, wherein we are saying whether the ID's combination is correct or not. That can say that, system has checked behind the scenes. But as an independent acceptance criteria, if I do not write AC3 and AC4, if I give the criteria to the QC team and say, is system checking it behind the scenes, they won't be able to test it out, right?
Yeah.
So that
Yes.
was a mistake. So do not write your criteria which no one can test. Even as a BA, you cannot demonstrate. So always write your criteria which you can demonstrate. If you want to capture some important information that behind the scenes system needs to do this, you add it as a note, or you try to incorporate that in other criteria. So I should have skipped AC2 and I would have just written AC3 and AC4 saying that given user has clicked on, has visited the Amazon login page. When user enters the ID and password, then if a match is found, user will be able to directly go to home page. If a match is not found, then user should get the validation, and a table of validation. So I should have just two criteria. I should have skipped AC2, which is not testable, and accordingly, I may have merged these three. AC4. Yeah.
Yes, got it. So it will be similar to test cases.
So some testing teams do not write test cases anymore. They just test out acceptance criteria, and next to acceptance criteria, they just mention pass or fail.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So some teams do that. Some teams like to do end-to-end testing. Some teams like to do negative test case testing, which sometimes BA misses writing. So exceptional flow is something that BA miswriting in the stories. But I covered the exceptional flow in this case, right? So I had said if my ID and password is not matching, what will happen? So my user stories are not always about happy path. They should include the negative path as well. And that's why I always say start thinking in terms of use cases. So when you think of a use case, it gives you a normal flow, it gives you an alternate flow, and it gives you an exception flow. So what I did in this case, I covered normal flow in my story, I covered exception flow in my story, and for alternate stories like login via SSO, login via Google, login via Facebook, I said write separate stories, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
So my thought process started from use case mode. Who is my actor? So when I said as a customer, seller, administrator, all those are my actors. Yeah. Then I covered
Mm-hmm.
what is my normal flow, alternate flow, exception flow, and like that.
Okay, so it is important to mention user stories with acceptance criteria.
Yes, because otherwise, how will you test out the story? So if I'm just saying as a customer, I want to be able to log in, uh, and I should so that I can make an order. How will developer know what to do? So until and unless you write an acceptance criteria, they will not know that okay, I need an ID field, I need a password field, and then there should be a button to say uh, enter, and then a system needs to check behind the scenes whether it's a whether the combination is valid or not. If it is not valid, what messages I need to give. If it is valid, what messages what should happen, right? So everything you need to
Yes.
define. Only then developer can develop. They cannot develop based on business requirements.
Okay, got it.
And the bread and butter of a BA is to give the functional requirements, isn't it? If you're
Yes.
telling them business requirements, PM can give them the business requirements. Yeah. It's the BA who develops the functional solution to those business requirements.
Yes. I mean, BRD and FRDs, both are important aspects.
Exactly. So user stories are nothing but a shorter version of BRD and FSD. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
earlier when we used to write BRDs, we used to write, 4 or 5 requirements at least in a single spec. And then you used to write functional spec, which is an elaborative solution to those requirements, 4 or 5 requirements. And then you used to link your BRD and FSD. So in terms of user story, what you are doing is you are linking your business requirement and functional requirement together, plus you are breaking down your functional requirements into smaller chunks. So if you would have been writing an FSD, you would have, catered to all the logins, SSO login, Google login, Facebook login, and login via ID and password in a single document. But having a user stories allowed you to split it out into different components.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
got it.
essentially the requirements have not changed. Yeah, the way we elicit requirements, the way we identify requirements, the way we solutionize requirements, everything has is same. Only difference is the way we document requirements. Earlier we used to use Word for documenting requirements. Today we are using Jira or TFS or other EDO tools, other systems to document the requirements. That's the only difference. So now we have requirement management tools. Earlier we didn't had requirement management tools, so we were using Office suite.
Got it. Yeah. So, Shipra, I mean, while in interview, what kind of questions we can expect in user stories?
So a very common question is this only. So can you? They'll give you a scenario. So for example, the interviewer may say, "Can you if I have captured a requirement of login page or login into the system, can you give me the epic feature and user stories which you are going to write?" Or they can say, "Can you write give me a sample user story which you will write for adding a comments field to the screen or adding a or to log in into the screen," right? So they'll take a very common example and they'll give you that example and ask you to elaborate. Otherwise, they might pose you a question: how do you write user stories? Can you give me a sample? In that case, you can give any of the samples that you have worked on. So any of the stories that you might have written. Yeah. So explain the scenario that this was the requirement, and I wrote it like that. Um, yeah, in terms of user stories, they might ask you, okay, um, what is a format of a user story? In which case, you can say, my format will be as a user role. I will, I want what to do what, so that what. So you can explain that format to them. They might even ask you when you are writing user stories, what all information will you capture? So most of the times, BA will stop at saying title, details, and acceptance criteria. But user stories are not only that. User stories comprise of many more things. They comprise of maybe priority, yeah, must have, should have, could have. They might comprise of whether there are any blockers on the story. They might comprise of links to other stories. They comprise of history of the story, wherein an audit tracking happens. They comprise of who the story is assigned to, what's the story status in terms of whether the acceptance criteria is complete or not. They might comprise of, you know, who peer reviewed the story or who approved the story. So many things can be associated with the story. So you should be aware of all those things.
Yeah, we do capture these things in Jira. I mean, it is easier in
Mm.
Jira to
Mm.
capture.
Yeah, just whenever you get this question, what all information will you capture in a user story? Just think from your Jira story perspective and see, what all is there. So you can tag your stories. You can, link your stories to test cases. So many things you can do with a story, right? Um,
Yes, yes.
you can mention which team this story is assigned to, which release the story will go in, what is the iteration path or the sprint path. So just mention all of that and it will cover you in that.
Yeah, got it.
Some
Makes
questions
sense.
might come around processes, right? So you have written a story. What will you do next? So you should. That's basically a requirement management question. So how do you manage your requirements in Jira, or how what processes do you follow? So in that case, you can say that once I create a story, I get it peer reviewed, or I can get it reviewed from a senior BA based on your experience, and then you can say that once I get confirmation, peer review feedback, I incorporate the same, send it to PO for approval, refine the story with PO, answer their queries, note down any important points that they highlighted, the customer highlighted. Then once I get an approval, I mark the story as ready for development. Then the story comes back to me after QC resolves the story, and I check out QC evidences and finally close the story, or move the story to UAT pending bucket, like that, right? So just explain the process that
Yeah,
is being followed in your organization. That is another question that you may get around user stories.
okay, got it.
So, adding to that, they will ask, it's a common question. They will ask how you consider your story as ready, or how it is done. Means how you consider the story is done. So they might expect you like what are the checklist you follow for labeling your story as ready for the dev team, and how you will make it as a done status. So they will check what all the process you follow. So that is also a common question.
Yeah, that's a definition of ready and definition of done. What is your
Yeah.
definition of ready? What is definition of done? So there are many Scrum concepts, right? My answer was specific around user stories. That's why I didn't mention it. But yeah, they can also ask you, about SMART criteria in user stories, or what are the 3 C's in story user stories. So you can Google them out. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, they
Yeah,
may ask you like how you split a story. Means, for example, for a requirement, so they will ask you like on what basis you will split a story. For example, there are different concepts, right? Vertical slicing, horizontal slicing. So whether on a feature wise you will split a story, or interface wise you will split a story, or dependency wise, I guess you will split a story, or whether you split a story on, I think horizontal slicing is about whether the UI part you will split, the logic part you will split, and the backend part you will create a split. So these questions also may come.
Yeah, they might ask you what is invest in user stories.
Yes.
so with respect to split, I think it all based on requirement from customers, right? Or the or,
Um,
or the
yeah.
concept which we are working on.
See, one of the important things about a story is it is supposed to be small. Yeah. So you split out your
Yeah.
story to the least logical, unit. So you cannot split out. So let's take an example back of our login story, right? So if I'm just saying I should be on, if I click on this URL, or if I go to this URL, I'll be on login page. That's not a something that will add value to the customer, right? So, and if I'm saying I'm entering user ID and password, and if I'm only saying system should allow me to log into the home page, then I'm missing the exceptional flow of the same story. So logically, login page, ID, password, and entering into the screen, or versus getting an error on the screen. So that's all 3 things that I will do together, isn't it? So that will be the least logical unit, I'll like to call it. Other than that, SSO login, Google login, all those are different alternates. So I can cover them in different stories. So if I have to log in and I have different, 5 to 6 paths that I can take, I'll split them out pathwise.
Got it. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is one scenario which I recently uh, came across in my team. So I will just narrate. So maybe I'll just get your guys' input as well. So this is for a backend script we were developing Shipra. It's not a UI. It's basically we are creating a logic as a script. Okay. So basically, the script was developed to assemble two tools. Okay. So how we will assemble is the tools will have some axis. So based on the axis, the script should assemble the tools. Okay. For example, x-axis, y-axis. So we'll give some angles, etc. The script should assemble. Okay. So what I have done is I have written the story and I have given acceptance criteria like when it is assembled, what is the uh, success message we need to show to the user. If it is there is some issue with the access in the tools, right? What is the error message we should highlight and all. Also, what I've done is I have created a section called business rules where I have mentioned like, for example, X should match with Y. So means for assembling the tool, there should be some process, right? Like I said, on the axis basis, all the business rules, like what all the mathematical calculations to be done, I have put it in the business rules and give it to the next, dev team and testing team. So there was a person from testing team. So they, he was contradicting that I should put all these business rules into the acceptance criteria. The reason why they are asking is, so from the testing team, they have a process like what all the scenarios we have mentioned in the acceptance criteria, they will create as a test cases. Okay, so they won't consider anything else. So whatever mentioned in the test cases, sorry, acceptance criteria, they will create as different scenarios for the test cases, Shipra. So they were asking me to put all the business rules into acceptance criteria, which I felt it is not a so it was kind of even we had an argument, not an argument, but in kind of an informal argument that no, it will not become into acceptance criteria. It will stay in business rules. So, what is your view on this? Like,
See, business rules, I'm assuming you have a separate document which you have created for business rules, right?
not a separate document, just some rules. The how
Yeah.
to assemble the tools, like on which axis. So, which two axes are compatible? Correct. So, those things, Shipra.
Yeah. So
But
usually what happens is business rules document is a separate document that is created, which may or may not be part of your data dictionary that you are creating for your project. Okay.
yeah,
So if you are having some business rules, definitely they need to go into that Excel document or that Word document or whatever document it is, so that you have a single repository or single point of reference for all of your business rules that are available in the system. So tomorrow, if you are setting up some other system for some other client, then you should have an easy access to all the rules available rather than going through all the 500 600 stories to identify which rules are present in my system, right? So
no.
that
This business rule is specific to that story. It's not will not be referred by any other story in future. Only concern for him is don't write into business rules section. Keep all the rules in the acceptance criteria itself. But basically, since acceptance criteria is just uh, kind of an end result only, right? We always create, right? So,
no, acceptance criteria is not the main result. Acceptance criteria is what you want testing team to test out.
hmm,
And so they were correct in saying that they want business rules in the acceptance criteria. But if you have
hmm.
a separate section or if you have a separate document, then you will definitely write your business rules in that document or that area. However,
Sorry, it's, uh,
what
that
what you
business
are supposed to, yeah.
yeah,
So
there is a rules attribute, right? So I have linked all this uh, rules into it, but they were since they are following this process, they want me to put rules in acceptance criteria.
yeah, yeah. So they were correct, and you were also correct. So what
Mm,
you're supposed to do in this case is keep your rules in your rules area, and then within your acceptance criteria, you should say while assembling my, my tools should follow the business rules as defined in this section. So
Yes, finally I did that only. So what I have
yeah,
done is
give
for
a
every
point.
rule I'm giving some acronyms, for example, BR1, BR2. So in acceptance criteria, when I have written that, when it is the user should those messages, and in that I mentioned like all this BR1, BR2, and BR3 should be satisfied. So I just
Exactly.
mentioned,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was the ideal way to do it, or that was the correct way to do it. Because if
yes,
you're not mentioning anything in the user stories acceptance criteria, it gets tested by a testing team. But that is
mm,
not the case. You want it to be tested, isn't it?
yes,
Acceptance criteria, what does this mean? So literally, you see, right? How will someone accept this user story? Or how will someone say, yes, the story is complete, right?
yes,
The story can only mark as complete if someone has tested out those business rules as well. So
correct.
you should mention. So don't just reference, right? Say that refer to this document or refer to the attachment. Don't repeat everything into your user story. If there is a better place for some, right? So sometimes we create a data dictionary. So data dictionary is supposed to create all fields, but then you are not supposed to write down each and every criteria around each and every aspect of that field. So if you in your data dictionary you are already capturing it's a text field and has a length of 1,000 characters, you need not repeat the same thing in your user story, because what will happen is if someone says no, I don't want 1,000 characters, I want it to be 2,000 characters, then what you will have to do is you will have to update your user story and you have to update it into your document as well. But sometimes what may happen is that you intended to update, but then someone called you in meeting and leave it behind, and then the document says 1,000, your user story says 2,000, and no one knows what is writing.
Yeah,
Right? So do not or never ever duplicate your requirements. Have requirements in relevant place. The place that they are supposed to be. So my data field is supposed to be in my data dictionary. I should not be noting down each and everything, or repeat everything which is there in my data dictionary into my story. But at the same time, I want my entire data dictionary, for that field to be tested. So in data dictionary, I may have different information, right? But when I'm be tested, I want to test whether my, when field is retrieved, when field is option, I want to test whether my field is editable, non-editable, or conditionally available, right? I want to capture the at what stage my field is available, at what stage my field not available. So many things I have captured, but I've captured all of them in data dictionary. So I should refer to that my field, behavior, and validations, and everything I should mention should be as per data dictionary. Don't repeat the same thing, but just point to that relevant place and do in your acceptance criteria. Otherwise, there's a high possibility that no one tested out the field. Maybe in the end it turned out to be a number field instead of a text field by mistake.
yes,
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
yes,
Yeah. And you mentioned you were in black, right? So that was the right.
yes. Somehow we need to convince, right? So I said, okay, we'll just put this links, the reference you just.
Yeah. See, it is very important to balance out, right? So if there are small requests like this, right? There is no need to even argue on that or fight on that, right? Or defend yourself on that. So if the testing team is saying, yeah, can you also note it down in the acceptance criteria? Just do it. The how it will help is, you will get peace of mind and you focus your energies on more important things that are important, right? Otherwise, you end up, circling around in smaller things, and then you end up spoiling your mood, you end up spoiling testing team's mood, and you end up spoiling your relationship. So choose your battles wisely. As a we are always battles. We are fighting with fighting with the web team, we are fighting with QC team, we are trying to convince our customer. So everyone is there to take out our energy. So we are not like that, I just do communicate with the dev lead and that's the end of it, right? We communicate so many people day in, day out. So it is very important for us to conserve our energies to do work. Otherwise, we end up, this person said that to me. How dare he said this to me, right? So we'll end up spending a lot of our energies into unnecessary battles. So choose your battles wisely. Put your firm foot down and say, no, I'm not going to do that. As if it is related to a customer requirement, and it's a non-negotiable thing, then you should say that, no, this is not how it will do. But if there is a smaller request and you do this, related to admin of the store, when you market or move this story, that's just do away with it, right? Why don't go into the battle? Why should I do that? This is not my work. Or and those things are necessary. They'll just drain you out. They'll just spoil your day. You should be happy doing your work, right? You should, and you can only do that when you focus on the right things, on the positive. So when you focus on solutioning, you'll get a solution at the end of the day, and you'll feel achieved. That have achieved something, right? You have solutionized something. But if you are just fighting out on smaller things, you'll end up, it'll drain you out completely. And at the end of the day, you'll be like, I didn't did a single thing in a day, right? So that's the mantra I always give. Choose the battles wisely. There's no point in, so be, don't be in pound finish. You may win a small battle, but you might end up losing the bigger battles, right? So even fight not only the bigger battles, which directly relate to your requirements. Don't lose out. Yeah, be on them. But people should not have a feeling that you're always fighting. Right? People should not find you rude, or people should not think that you're not helpful. Right? They should respect you in terms of your knowledge. They should say, this person is saying something to this. They should not say that this person keeps on blabbering whole day. I don't even need to listen to him, because the person is like, he will be fighting only.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you are like that. Yeah, let me be very clear. But just because you mentioned that there was a difference of opinions, I thought, let me repeat this important point. Yeah, but does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so we start 10 minutes. Is there anything that someone would like to ask or discuss?
Shipra, is this the right session to speak regarding document? In interviews, how should we tackle this question?
Yeah, but what question?
With respect to FRD and BRD, if the interviewer is asking how would you prepare these documents, so how should we answer this?
Yeah, so if an interviewer is asking you, how do you document your BRD and FST, they are essentially trying to gauge whether you have even written the documents or not, right? Because see, in industry there are many people who do have a business analyst title, but they're not actually doing BA job, right? Some junior BA, they're just copy pasting, stories from one system to another. Some smaller junior BAs, they are just testing out things for the senior BAs, right? Or assisting job, right? So the purpose of this question is to understand whether you have even written a BRD or an FST in the first place. So if you have written it, so you will know the contents of the BRD and FST. So you start with those contents, right? So when this question was asked in my present company's interview, so I started with, so my first page will comprise of my BRD title. It will comprise of which version I am on, which comprises of who has drafted this document. It comprises of the date on which the document has been released, and it comprises of my client logo and my company's logo. The next page comprises of the index of, or contents, table of contents. Then I have a section for maintaining version history. I have a section for maintaining who is an approver on this document, my essential stakeholders, who are internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, who is writing the document, who is peer reviewing the document. Then I have a area around the scope, what is in scope of this document, what is out of scope of this document, and what are the assumptions I am making in this document. I have a section dedicated glossary, of the abbreviations or terms I'm going to use in this document. Then contents, then I have a body of my document, and then in the end I have any appendix or a supporting documents I'll add a copy. In the body of the document will depend on whether I'm writing a BRD or an FSD. If I'm writing a BRD, then I'll start with noting down what the business problem people are facing, or what enhancement the client needs, and then what are the essential business requirements they have noted, or whether we have considered any other alternate solutions, or anything was discussed. So each and everything business related, I'll note it down, and I'll also maybe create an as is process diagram. If it is an FSD, then I'll start with noting down my business requirement, and I'll associate the functionalities, which will be needed in order to deliver that particular business requirement. I'll repeat it for all the business requirements which I have captured in a business requirement document, and that's pretty much it covers everything. I may have a section for business rules which I'm introducing. I may have a section of my data dictionary document as part of the appendix. I may have a section for what else? Validations, which I may be introducing to separate them out. Yeah, and rest everything will be same as BRD scope, out of scope assumptions, and what version history and other things. So if you tell them all these details, if you tell them what all information you capture in BRD, that's the answer for the interviewer. So they are essentially trying to gauge whether even you have written the BRDs or not, and you will not know these minor things if you have not written it, right? So until and unless you cram what I just said. Yeah.
Yes, yes, Shipra, got it. Yeah.
So you can only know these things if you have actually created it, right? So
Yes.
they may ask you, okay, you are saying assumptions. Can you give an example of assumptions that you usually capture? Things like that. Yeah. So they may cross question you. So the idea is to gauge your work.
Shipra, can you give an example of data dictionary, please?
What do you mean by example of data dictionary? Do you mean what all information I will capture in a data dictionary?
If someone who doesn't know what data dictionary is.
Okay. So data dictionary is a document that is created for almost all projects which have fields in it, right? So if until and unless it is a technical integration or integration kind of a requirement, if you are creating a system, you will definitely have some fields in it. So if I take an example of login ID and password. So login ID is one field, password is second field, which is available on login page. So what I usually do is I create a data dictionary that gives me a list of all the fields that will be available in the system, and it gives me the behavior of these fields. Okay. So my dictionary will start from, it's nothing but an Excel document. Yeah, because Excel is a best format for a data dictionary. And in this Excel, I'll have columns like this. Like, so I'll say where this field is placed. So going back to our earlier example, login page. Yeah. So I have two records in my Excel, which will say on login page, I have two fields, ID and password. I'm not capturing any buttons. I'm not capturing any options. Those are functionalities. But data dictionary comprises of only the fields. Yeah, be it user entered field, so be it automatically calculated field, be it non-editable field, but all the fields are listed in a data dictionary. So I'll say on my login page, I have ID and password, and then what is the type of field. So ID is a email ID kind of a field where at the rate is mandatory. Yeah. Or it's basically a free text field. Password is also a free text field, alphanumeric field, varchar you can call it. Yeah. So what type of field it is? If it is a number field, how many characters are allowed? What is the maximum value allowed? What is the minimum value allowed? Uh, how many decimal places will be shown, like that, right? So data elements of my field. Then whether this field is mandatory to enter, whether this field is optional, whether this field is mandatory if a particular condition is met, whether the field is editable, non-editable. If I have a configurability in the system that the field is editable for one user and not for the other user, I will define editability user role wise, or I will define editability my workflow stages wise. That field may be editable in first stage, field may not be editable in the last stage, right? So each and everything related to that field will be listed out in the data dictionary. So if you want to know the behavior of any field, you need not search through all the 500, 600,000 stories. You can directly go to the data dictionary document and you can see what fields are already available. So they are especially helpful when you have similar project or similar, implementation for your client. So for example, my client may already have a product set up and I have a data dictionary of that product. And they come to you and say, I want a different product to be set up, but it is, a copy of the previous product. Then in that case, you need not create another data dictionary, right? So you have a reference point to start with. So okay, these fields were introduced for that product. Let me copy them out for this product also. Yeah. That way you'll do it. So data dictionary is a repository of your data fields available in the system.
Thank you, Shipra.
Yeah. In addition to your data fields, you also note down the business rules associated with the field. You may also note down the validations on the field. Yeah. So for example, percentage field may have a validation. You cannot enter more than 100 value. So that those kind of validations you may capture, field-wise validations you may capture in your data dictionary. You may capture some configuration aspects. So whatever help the team identify the behavior of a field, you'll capture that.
Sure, Shipra. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Any API related user stories have you wrote, Shipra?
A lot of them.
Maybe just an example that you want to share.
Okay. See, whenever you have, so first of all, we discussed about integration requirements in detail. Let me find that recording and share it on the channel after this call. Okay. So I have explained in detail how we write the requirements or what requirements we capture for an integration project. So any integration, right? It comprises of a request and it comprises of a response. So you send some information to the second system, and that second system will give you something back. Either they say okay, pass, fail kind of a response, which you need not consume. You just send out that information, or they may do some calculations and give you a calculation back. So in terms of requirements, what you say is trigger, when the requirement should be or when the request should be sent out. Second is what all comprises of my request, what response I will get, and the fourth one will be how I am going to use that response. Okay. Now when it comes to writing the user stories for it, you may club them together, or you may split it out. For example, in one of the cases we had 600 fields. So of course 600 fields we cannot cover in a single request file or a single story. The file will be single, but the story cannot be single. So what we did is split out the request stories. We had a separate story for the trigger, and then we have different stories for the request. Yeah, comprising of for each and every field. That okay, my request should be able to send this field. This field wise we have split out the stories. So your story is essentially, says that when what happens, what is the trigger, then what happens, what should go into my request, and then what response I will get, and what I will do with that value. Okay. So for example, when user clicks on price, then my contract information should go to the pricing tool, and when the pricing tool gives me a price premium value, then I should display that premium value in this particular field. Yeah, like that you'll write your requirements. So you write your requirements again from business user perspective, either that, or you write your requirements from technical perspective and say that in my request file, map these fields to these tags, kind of a technical story. So it's a blend of technical and functional behavior. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll share the playlist link. You can refer to that. Integration
That would be
requirements.
great. Thank you.
We had a 1 hour, more than 1 hour session sometime back.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. Yeah, please do check out these, topics like writing smart user stories or invest in user stories, TCs of user stories. There was one article on how to split out the stories. I think it was from Mountain Goat Software. I'm not sure. But yeah, uh, check these out and let me know in case you have any doubts. Yeah, we can cover those topics as well if you require it. Okay, Aditi?
Yes,
Thank you,
yes.
Shipra.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you,
Shipra.
Karthik.
Thank you. Thank you, Shipra.
Okay,
Thank
then.
you, Karthik.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so let's wrap up for today. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
We'll catch up next week. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks for joining the live session, because otherwise I would have had to cancel this session because the person who requested the session didn't turn up. But no worries.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, Shipra.
Shipra, these recordings are available somewhere.
Yes, so the recording will be available on the same link in X for 1 month. But what I also do is I keep, I record this session again and I upload it on the YouTube channel. So the channel name is the BA Club itself. You can
Okay.
search for the channel, or you can let me know and I can give you the link. So it's a YouTube channel.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yes, yes.
I keep a recording of all the sessions there.
Yes, please do share the links which
Okay.
we have discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll do that. So from the integration link itself, you will get the channel, no? So to subscribe
Yes,
to
yes.
the channel and all the recordings, even the past recordings will be available there for your reference.
Yes, Shipra. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can refer to the playlist. So for example, interview tips is a separate playlist. So we have talked about how to answer interviews a couple of times. So all those recordings are available there. So you can.
Sure, Shipra. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay then. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Shipra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Bye. Good night. Happy weekend.
Happy weekend.